Andrew Kehoe was born in Tecumseh, Michigan on February 1st, 1872. He was 55 years old on the fateful day of the Bath School disaster. Andrew was one of 13 children. His mother died when he was very young and his father remarried. However, Andrew did not get along with his stepmother and they fought often. One day, she attempted to light an oil stove in their kitchen, and while doing so, the appliance exploded, setting her on fire. Andrew watched and offered no help as his stepmother burned. He eventually doused the flames with water, but it was too late, and she died from the severity of her burns. Andrew Kehoe attended Tecumseh High School and continued his education at Michigan State University in East Lansing, where he met his future wife, Nellie Price. Kehoe spent an extended period of time out west to attend electrical school. During the duration of his stay, he sustained a severe head injury that put him in a sporadic coma for 2 months. He eventually recovered from his injuries and returned to Michigan, where he married Nellie. The Kehoes became friendly with their neighbors, the Harts. The Harts were farmers who often lent a helping hand to the newly arrived couple. The Kehoes lacked a motor vehicle at the time of their move, and Mrs. Hart would drive Mrs. Kehoe to Lansing each week to shop and sell their butter and eggs. This was a regular date between the two women until Andrew shot Mrs. Hart's dog out of a sheer annoyance of the animal's barking. This ended their weekly trips. The Harts never brought up the dog that Kehoe killed so ruthlessly, but were alarmed to find that Andrew brutally killed one of his own horses because the poor animal would not pull. In 1922, the Bath School tax was about $12 on the amount of $1,000. Kehoe was enraged and complained often that his taxes were too high. In 1923, due to the expansion of school property, taxes were raised to $18. In 1924, the following year, Kehoe was nominated and elected to fill an expired position on the board. He was to be trustee for the term of 3 years and eventually became the treasurer of the school board. Kehoe was always very degrading to the superintendent, Mr. E. E. Hewick. He showed him little courtesy during board meetings and at one point even tried unsuccessfully to boot him out entirely. He made sure he got his way in every aspect of the board issues. In the spring of 1925, Mrs. Bert Detliff died after being elected as township clerk, and Kehoe was asked to step in until the following spring election. Kehoe had constant troubles with the school board when he didn't get his way, and this led to the public not re-electing him as clerk the following year. This tremulous relationship was the stepping stone to the tragedy that would follow 2 years later. During the summer of 1926, Kehoe did some repairing and rewiring in the schoolhouse. He had free rein of the school, and this was most likely where the planning of his evil plot unfolded. The last meeting that Andrew attended was on May 5, 1927, only 13 days before the tragedy. He seemed unperturbed. Kehoe was careful not to let his plan slip, but he did act a bit peculiar around neighbors in the months before the tragedy. A. McMullen was one of them. About a month before the disaster, Kehoe gave McMullen the better of his 2 horses. McMullen brought the horse back because he was afraid that Kehoe might be about to commit suicide because of the fact that he had curiously stopped work on his farm for about a year. Over the time that Kehoe was working as a maintenance man in 1926 in the schoolhouse, he began accumulating over a ton of high explosive material called Puritol. He made purchases in many different locations in Lansing so he could stock up. No one blinked an eye because the explosive Puritol was often used by farmers for excavation and other chores. Kehoe, an intelligent man, spread out his purchases that he would not be under any suspicion. He became known as the Dynamite Farmer because it became routine to hear explosions on his farm. On the fateful morning of May 18, 1927, Andrew's plan unfolded. He blew up his entire farm and killed his wife and all of his animals. The previous day he had filled his car with shrapnel and dynamite, which he intended to detonate as the school bombs were going off, so he could finally get revenge on the superintendent. He blamed higher taxes for all of his misfortune and would stop at nothing to kill what he believed was the source of his problem. With nothing left but ruin of his once beautiful farm, he made his way, one last time, to the school.